that is active, and it is setting up the webinar. And if you guys have already joined us, thank you so much. Welcome to Day Drinking with Wes Hagen, our special guest, Roxie Ward, winemaker extraordinaire for good old Smashberry as well as Ballard Lane. So we're looking good. It looks like this we're live up on the Facebook site. So now I can go ahead and come back and start this wonderful show. All right, I'm going to trust that everything looks good. And we're back. So again, it is the 12th of June. Really looking forward to it. I love the champagne poster in the background. Those beautiful French wine posters are absolutely gorgeous and some of my favorite in the world. So welcome to Day Drinking. And anyone who's, looks like we've already got maybe 5 or 6 folks who have already joined us, feel free to ask any questions. Nick is going to start us off saying he's been truly enjoying the 17 Smashberry Red, which I have a bottle right here. It's been one of my wife's favorite wines through COVID-19. Just finishing up our 2nd case. Man, we love the Profacis. Personally, I believe the Syrah is the key to the beauty of the blend. Is it possible with only 20% Syrah, is Syrah, in your estimation, when you're adding it to a blended wine, does it tend to show more than other varieties?
It can really like plump up and show its true varietal like expression and fruit and just really enhance a wine. I think Syrah is just one of those great grapes. I really found a passion for it in Australia myself, and it has just depth to it. So yeah, now, it Merlot is really what hits that Smashberry.
Yeah, very primary, very very vinous, very grapey almost. I mean, it definitely has I think to me the key to that wine is the 5% Grenache, because to me we reduce the amount of residual sugar. Excuse me. Well, the team reduced the residual sugar between 16 and 17, but we did something brilliant, which I'll give maybe credit to the team, that they decided to add 5% Grenache on top of it. That, to me, gave a little confectionery aroma in the nose, which really drives home the fact that it might smell a little confectionery and sweet, but it is pretty much bone dry on the palate. And we'll continue to talk about that.
And like it's a real juicy fruit. It's really got a real great varietal character that comes out.
Yeah, and I think with a name like Smashberry and the packaging, I think the wine has to be juicy, right? I mean, we can play around with it quite a bit, but I want to make sure the wine's juicy. And speaking of juicy, I have some of that delicious 2019 Smashberry Rosé in my glass, and boy, it has day drinking and National Rosé Day tomorrow. National Rosé Day. So remember that the government expects rosé all day tomorrow.
Rosé all day. Woo!
Here's to day drinking, and here's to you, Roxie. Okay, well, I'm gonna start by saying that take me from growing up in Salinas, California, to how you ended up going to college in Wagga Wagga, New South Wales, Australia.
Yeah, there was a bit of a transition. Growing up in Salinas, I really grew up. My father was in agriculture and produce, so I grew up, hands in the dirt, kind of a kid. I really had a passion for art as well early on, kind of a natural ability that I just had. So when I left Salinas, I decided to go to art school, and I went down to Laguna Beach and went to the Art Institute of Southern California, because that'd be fun and, not as serious right out of high school. And I did that for a little while. And when I came home, I realized it's really hard to make money as an artist and to find an art that I can do. So I ended up going to Han Estate and Smith & Hook, and I started working for them in the tasting room, and they hired me also as an in-house graphic designer, which was really great, except I became kind of restless. Art Nathan was the winemaker at the time, and he put me into his vineyard of 1,000 acres and let me do vineyard sampling, cluster counts, and taught me a little bit about brick sampling and showed me how to do pHs. And the next thing I knew, I kind of got the bug. Nice. Went up north, decided to move up to Sonoma County with a few friends of mine. One of my great friends is actually Tasha Franchione, which is the daughter of Rose and Gary Franchione.
One of the famous Garys. The
And
crazy
Roseanne's
Garys,
been here.
the less crazy of the Garys.
Yes, yes. She's one of my best friends. She had gone to Fresno State in an enology program, and she's like, hey, you know what? I know you have a little bit of a background. So how about you come to work for me? She was working at Vinovation at the time and put me to work in the lab and taught me everything she knew. And I really just loved it and kind of kept going from there. Worked Martini and Pratty, did Custom Crush there, which was really a lot of fun. And then I went on to Mum Napa. Really fell in love with it there. And that's when I made the decision, all right, I want more experience. I want more. And I really wanted cellar experience. I had majorly lab experience, and I really wanted to dive headfirst into cellar. So I decided I needed a degree in what I was doing besides just my background in art education. And I also did the cellar experience. And I had a couple of friends. One is in Australia, that she is a winemaker over there, and she told me about the university and the program over there. And one thing is Australians will just kind of throw you to the wolves and let girls just be right in there with elbow to elbow with all the cellar crew and just dive in. And I knew I could really get the opportunities that I wanted and needed, and then also get my education at the same time and do vintages overseas, and lumped it all into one and ended up in Wagga Wagga, Australia, going to Charles Sturt University.
Now, it's funny that you mentioned Mum, because that is a huge piece of me becoming a winemaker. I took a tour of Mum in 1989, when I was a junior in college. And I wanted to be an English teacher. I wanted to be a writer, but I had this really cool, kind of long-haired, like dreadlock hippie guy who was giving tours at Mum. And he mentioned that they were riddling and disgorging that day, and would we want to go take a tour? And I took a tour, and I remember thinking, this is something that is really, I have never considered winemaking, even though I was very lucky as a young person to be shown wine and great wines of the world at a very young age. I always knew wine. I always felt like I knew wine more than people in my age cohort. But it was Mum. It was Mum that actually turned my brain on, I think. Two things, I think the Mum moment, and then the first time I tasted my first amazing red Burgundy, I think were those moments. Did you have a preferred media when you were studying art?
Painting, sculpture, and then also a real passion for, which was my side major, which was photography.
Oh, cool.
So majorly was sculpture and painting, so very hands-on, very more of the fine art side. I wasn't really a graphic designer.
Do you still do photography outside cameras and
I do little
phones?
painting and stuff like that, and I actually do calligraphy as well. I actually learned calligraphy at like 9 years old, and it's something I've kept going. Had a little side business at one time where I was doing calligraphy and being a just calligraphy artist.
Do you think we might see a original Roxie Ward Smashberry label someday?
Maybe.
I love that. All right. So you mentioned something that I don't want to gloss over, and that is you implied that Australian winemakers or Australian winemaking men might be a little bit more ecumenical in not in allowing female winemakers to be right there in the trenches. Do you find do you think that's a good generalization, that maybe that winemakers in Australia are given more opportunity to be physical than they are here in the United States? Do you think there is sort of an embedded sexism within American winemaking?
I think there's an embedded sexism, but I just think sometimes Australians won't like me for saying that. They have it's a rough country and it's a tough country, so they had to really work hard, and their women were right there working with them, so they had no problem, where you pick up a bucket and a pump, and they're not like, oh, do you need a hand? They're like, well, you better holler if you need help. Where I would say that Americans are a little bit more, we want to like, oh, always open the doors, always do those kind of things, and allow women, to make sure that we need a hand. Where, when I'm working in the cellars and things like that, I'm going to ask for help, I don't always need the help.
Well, I now know my 35th book project in line and wine is going to be called Chivalry and Winemaking, Australia versus Santa Barbara.
Yeah.
That sounds great. I think you answered. Was there a moment though? Let's see this. Was there ever a doubt that you'd return from Australia or New South Wales to California for your winemaking?
Yeah, I mean, there was a doubt just because I actually left it open, is what I did. When I went to go, I left myself open to be open to not coming back. And one of the things, it was hard to leave everybody because I love, my friends there and everything, but it wasn't home. And I kind of felt that after a while, like, okay, well, I love it here, but it just isn't California to me. It just isn't my home, but I left it open. I didn't tell myself, well, I'm going to come back. I'm going back to California. But I didn't tell myself I'd stay in Australia either. I told myself, that's the greatest part, one of the greatest parts of our industry. It's a worldwide industry, and it's almost a world language with all, we can all speak the same language. We can all make wine. So I could have left it open to move to France, move to Italy, move to South Africa. But I did want to come back to California once I was done.
That's cool. So besides venomous critters, because obviously everyone misses those, your King Browns and everything else. What do you miss most about Australia? And what if you could just get in a transporter? Because I know if you flew there, the first thing you'd want to do is probably sleep. But if you could transport back to Wagga Wagga, what's the first thing you would do, and what's the first thing you would eat and drink?
Yeah, I would go straight to Romano's, which was my favorite pub down the street from my house that I went to all the time. I'd go straight there, and I'd have a Cooper's beer.
Yeah. Green or red?
I like the sparkling Coopers, so I think that's the red.
Green label. Green is sparkling, red is like a lager, or
maybe. Yeah, that's right. I haven't had it in like a couple years now, so I'm sad.
Do you roll your Coopers?
I do roll my Coopers. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bottle conditioned ale, and it deserves to have all that beautiful manoprotein in solution.
Yeah, unfiltered beer. It's just fantastic. And then, first thing I'd do is I have some of my best friends there. A lot of great winemakers that I love and are over there. Some of my, people I think of like sisters from another mister, some of my best friends, and call them all into Romano's so we could just catch up like we used to.
That's awesome. So I'm going to ask you this. So what is your earliest memory about wine? And then the next part of the question is, was there a seminal wine or moment that turned you into a wine geek or a potential winemaker?
Well, I have to talk a little bit about my family. Half of my family is Portuguese. They come from Porto, so they're all from Porto. Wine was kind of just, it was always part of our family functions. It was always a piece of everything. When you had a celebration, everybody always had wine. So wine was always around me. I didn't really know that I would go straight into wine per se. At an early age, I just was around it and had friends that made it. And then my pivotal moment was more probably when I was working for Hahn Estates, and he put me in that vineyard. I always had a passion for science as well. I've always did well. I had that chemistry teacher in high school that said, if she'd only just really apply herself, she'd do great. I was always like in honors math classes and all these things. So when I got in the vineyard and I saw how it's art and science and you put them together, it just really clicked for me. Like, I think this is the path I want to go. And it was Mom that sealed it for me that I wanted to be a winemaker. It was the sparkling industry that said, this is fun.
Well, that's awesome, because obviously wine is one of the few things that you really get to get dirty and crafty and scientific, and there's lab and there's outside and there's inside. And I remember, my job now is a lot more promotion, a lot more media. But when I was a vineyard manager and winemaker at Club Pepe, I obviously was the vineyard manager, the winemaker, the webmaster, hospitality, wine club, shipping. So the nice thing about that, I felt like I was being stretched so thin I was going to snap, and eventually I did. But I think the amazing thing is when you get in that sort of, everyone I always asks, what should I do as a young winemaker? I'm like, well, go sign up and work with Young's or Southern, carry a bag for a year to learn how to sell wine. Because if you can't sell wine, you probably shouldn't make it. Then do a harvest for a small producer in the United States. Go do a producer somewhere in the world that's small, that you're forced to do barrels. Then you're forced to do vineyard nets. Then you're forced to, so get it all in, learn how to put a plate and filter, you know, a plate filter together. Cause it's the worst thing you were ever going to do in the history of the job as a winemaker. And the more opportunities we have to have that complete idea, now you're in a position where you also have people under you, obviously at the Miller Family Wine Company. When you ask them to do something, you know you've done that 1,000 times. And when you see it, you know right away and intuitively that it's real. And I thought that was a really good way to go. Do you have a favorite thing about being a winemaker?
Probably my favorite thing, it's kind of a way to put it, is it's an analogy I can kind of use, and I got this analogy from Ken Brown working with him, is I like the winemaker and I like being the winemaker. So I like to be the kind of my conductor of my orchestra, that's my symphony, and they're creating my music, which is my wine. So I like the part of leading the winery, which, you know, and all my cellar workers, and getting them happy, harmonious, and bringing in the grapes, making the fruit, and just being that conductor of the process is the best part I love, is the part I love seeing happen. I love being everybody seeing happy and great products coming out of it, and a team coming together and being that conductor of it.
Now, a lot of people don't understand what it's like being a, you know, obviously the winemaker sort of ideal is you got the best job in the world, you're day drinking all day. Sorry, now that I'm basically being sort of pulled away a little bit from winemaking. It's funny that I'm day drinking even more. But, you know, I think one thing that people don't understand is how intense, and I want you to sort of describe for yourself this sort of intensity of taking a wine that took a year to grow, a year to ferment, maybe and to age, maybe even longer, and then put it in a bottle, wait, you know, you may wait a month, 2 months, 3 months before you release it. And then you're going to probably spend another year of your life selling it or promoting it. So I like to say making a wine is like, it's like making a movie or writing and producing a Broadway play. My analogy is the first time I open a wine that I've been part of making, or as the winemaker, first time I open that bottle, maybe after bottle shock, 6 months after, right as we're releasing it, is it ready to release? Well, let's go visit the 2018 Pinot Noir. Pop that bottle, put it in the glass. How worried are you when you stick your nose in a wine for the first time that you spent 3 years of your professional life? What's on the line, and what's going through your mind when you are opening and tasting one of your wines for the first time?
I mean, you do feel your stomach about right up in here before you take that first sip or smell. Actually, the smell is going to give you the most sense. So you do almost feel like there's times when you feel like you're the chicken with your head on the chopping block, because it's going to tell you what it's going to tell you. And it's a lot of pressure. It's an intense amount of pressure, and you're doing it all the way from the beginning, and the bottling is the hardest part, to get it perfectly into that bottle to make sure it stays exactly like you wanted it to stay. And I mean, it's like being in a pressure cooker. Yeah. And then once you taste it and it's released, it's the best feeling in the world. No, it's an absolute wave that comes over you.
When you put your nose in a glass of a Roxie Ward wine, what do you want to smell, and what do you not want to smell?
Well, I want you to see mainly the expression of the fruit. I want, you know, really good expression of the fruit, not as much good expression of the vineyard and where it comes from. You know, a lot of my wines are fruit forward, a really good expression of each varietal, which also the Smashberry Red is a compilation of varieties commingling with each other and what that can happen. So I really like a really great expression of fruit, so you can kind of just delve in like, yep, this is what it's all about. And they're a little bit, you know, not on the sweeter side, a little bit more on the, you know, serious side, but, you know, I think they're well balanced to have really nice tannins, really good drinking wines. You know, I want people not to feel like, oh, I've got to wait. No, go ahead, have, enjoy this wine. This is what life's about. It's about enjoying it now.
Absolutely. We won't have to go to what you don't want to smell, because that never happens, because you're.
Yeah, I don't want you to smell anything bad enough.
Well, yeah, and obviously, I've read basically a study from the University of Edinburgh about 10 years ago that found that women have significantly better olfactory senses than men, which makes perfect sense, right? I mean, from an evolutionary perspective, we would protect, kill, hunt, drop a big hunk of bloody meat on the floor of the cave. And then, of course, a woman is nurturing, collecting, fermenting, probably also protecting, but more than anything, the muscle of the man and the nose of the woman is really, to a certain extent, sort of the venturi for human evolution. Like, if the woman's nose smells, we all die. The tribe dies of poison. The muscle of the man fails. The women are taken by another tribe or destroyed during a war. Have you ever felt that you smell stuff in a wine that you were somehow feeling a little hesitant because maybe a male winemaking cohort or someone, have you had an experience where you've noticed that you're able to outsmell your male cohorts? And feel free to say yes, because my wife has a super palate, and I take everything to her.
I have. I've had it a few times, especially with like H2S, which is kind of that nasty little character we all don't like to smell. I'm highly sensitive to it. I'm very sensitive to Brett. I'm sensitive to any type of EA issues. I will say them, and sometimes I think some people can get kind of a house palate where all of a sudden they don't realize it, and you're like arguing with them like, no, we have it. We got to do something about it. So yeah, I do know. I do try to stand my ground, though. It's one of the things as a winemaker, you just got to keep barreling through. No, I'm picking it up, and it's going to grow.
Here's a good question for you. It's almost one of the speed round questions, which we'll get to in a little bit, but faults in wine, faults at the edge of faults at the edge of perception. Is that complexity, or is that lazy winemaking?
I believe it's lazy winemaking.
The French would disagree with you.
I know.
It's just so often when someone tells me that the wine is all about place and all, I get Brett and Lacto, and again, I love, and I would disagree almost slightly. From my winemaking perspective, I 100% agree with you. For my wine drinking, I find faults at the edge of perception some of the most fascinating things, because being married to a perfect person would be boring, right? None of us would ever imagine we could be married to a perfect person, because humans are fallible. But to me, a perfect wine, someone says, hey, you want to taste a 100-point wine? I'd rather taste an 89-point wine, because I think it has more to teach me. If you're telling me this wine is perfect, where do you go from there? Yeah. And show me a 100-point wine that is not a wine that its quality is based on concentration and not necessarily on. The only 100-point wine I've ever tasted was a Sine Qua Non Midnight Oil. It was a Syrah, and I had it with Brian Loring at a dinner at the Hitching Post probably 10 years ago. And it was the only bottle on the table that only had 4 inches on it. It was a $500 bottle of wine. It was a 100-point bottle, and it got ignored at table. It really did. We all tasted it and said, wow, it really does have a 45-second finish. Useless. At this point. It was a little odd in that sense.
Yeah, I think with that fault thing, you could get yourself in a lot of trouble if you're always trying to push that way. So that's my
part of me saying that is when I worked at Club Pepe, I had no temperature control. I had no jacketed tanks. I had a Bell filter, a very rustic production, and the wines were never perfect, but I felt that what they lacked actually added some character, sort of like the Cindy Crawford mole, Right. A slight distraction to take you away from the beauty. So when you go back to the beauty, you're like, damn, that's beautiful. Yeah. I love that. So if you could be a winemaker at any winery in the world for one vintage, of course it would be the Miller Family Wine Company, but let's just say that we'll take that off the table. What winery in the world would you accept a one vintage assistant winemaker or winemaking position? You could choose any. Any winery in the world.
Yeah, probably with Pierre Jouet. Which I know is not GH Mum, but it is owned by the same company.
Yeah. And is there, they make a lot of wine. Do you think I mean, I almost would think you'd go Salon or Salos or Gimonet or tiny little grower. Do you think you would, why would you choose a larger producer?
Just one thing with the larger producer, there is a lot of bottles, because I was with the parent company of them, there's a lot that we don't see that ever get really released from their region. So you could see all those smaller lots that they get to make, as well as the large scale of that great champagne. I think you could see a bigger array, and just the history inside that house as well. If not there, it'd be Veuve Clicquot, just because I've read her story, her biography, and
everything attributed to Dom Perignon was really actually done by the widow. She invented the punt bottle. She protected her workers with masks. She basically, I mean, she definitely had the skills. True or false, the Champenois are the greatest wine blenders in the world?
I believe that's true. I mean, one of the things with Champenois is the winemaker's allowed to just, you have full before you get to just put your hands all over that. Is one of the greatest things that you get to do. And them and they're just absolutely amazing wines being produced.
I have to say, if I had to, everyone always says, okay, desert island wine. I'd say the only reason I don't say champagne is because I don't have an ice maker. And drinking hot champagne on an island, I'm just going to have to say Fernet, because I can drink Fernet warm and it'll keep me alive a lot longer and it'll keep my attitude popular. But if I had a cooler, I think champagne has got to be, I mean, you can drink it to sober up.
Yeah.
Or you can drink it to forget your troubles.
Right.
Or as Lily Bollinger said, I don't touch this stuff unless I'm thirsty.
Right.
Right. Oh, cool. That was a good one. Let's talk a little bit about Smashberry as a wine brand. How do you see it currently? And do you see any changes, line extensions, which means are there going to be new wines? Because I happen to know the answer to that, but I would love to hear it from you. What's the plan with Smashberry? Because we got a lot of fans out there listening.
Oh, yeah. So Smashberry, it's fun, exciting. One of the things it's a real daring type of label. A lot of just pushing the boundaries, not quite traditional. With the commingling we do of the varietals and the ones that we put together to kind of create these big reds. And then also our rosé. I believe we're bringing back the Smashberry White. So that I'm excited about, because I do really like to make a white wine that's a little bit taking some of the best grapes that we have and making one of the best wines with not being limited to just a single varietal.
Cool. And the Smashberry White back in 2014 that I was selling when I first came onto the company was predominantly Roussanne. It was predominantly a white Rhone blend, and it had some white Riesling. It had some Viognier, so it was incredibly floral. I felt it was a little confused in style, and one reason why it didn't really resonate in the market, it was a little between off dry and slightly sweet, and I don't know if it had a home. But man, I would love to taste a bone dry Rhone style white, sort of the same way, Smashberry Red, I sometimes call it, sort of a Cabernet, it's kind of somewhere between a Bordeaux blend and influenced by Rhone varietals, but would love to see a Rhone based wine with beautiful aromatics and a little waxy sort of unctuousness that you get out of some of those white Rhone varietals. I'm really looking forward to that. Currently, if I'm not mistaken, because I remember blending a few of these wines back with Thomas Fertel, I believe these wines have never been co-fermented. Any plans to play with co-fermentation, or do you think it makes more sense to keep everything varietally sequestered and then come at the end and blend these wines together?
I think we kind of had talked about it a little bit. It kind of depends on the ripening of how each the varietals will ripen, but if we can bring like maybe a couple in that we can designate in the right size, we'll we're going to think about commingling maybe some Merlot and Cabernet and things that'll ripen kind of similar timings.
Do you think you would co-ferment grapes from the same original region? Like, would you co-ferment Cabernet and Syrah if they came in at the same time? Would you have a problem with that? Or would you try to keep maybe the regions? And this is a good question because we got a lot of home winemakers watching. In your experience, what is the difference between keeping the varietals separate and throwing them all in the same fermenter and co-fermenting? Obviously, harvest is an issue because if you have 23 bricks and 28 bricks, it'll look like 25 bricks in the fermenter, but you'll get all the green character and all the raisiny character from both ends. Tell us a little bit about your experience between co-fermenting, which just means you throw a bunch of different grapes into the fermenter together to allow them to do their thing together.
I mean, the one thing about keeping them separate is you kind of just have a little bit more control. You know, it control more of the blend when it's finished. You can manipulate it a little bit more if you don't want, oh, well, I don't think that much of the Syrah worked this year or that much of the Merlot worked this year, and you can control it a little more. If you do the pre-blending ahead of time, you've got what you got. So that is the one option of keeping it separate that gives us more control.
The 2019 rosé is 77% Grenache, 20% Syrah, and 3% Chardonnay. And I love the addition of Chardonnay. I think it's really a sexy aromatic. Do you see any? Do you think it's the varietal composition is going to be a little different each year depending on what's coming in?
That one will definitely change year to year. That's not going to always be exactly the same, especially rosés just typically always that way. We do like to co-ferment that one, so that's part of it. And then the Chardonnay is kind of just a last minute addition of what we feel like kind of enhances and lifts up the fruit, and that's what we kind of do with that Chardonnay addition. So that one's always going to change year to year, but it'll stay in the similar style.
Now, if you had to choose 100% Grenache rosé or 100% Mourvèdre rosé, not knowing where it's from, just saying, hey, tonight I'm drinking a rosé and I want one or the other. Which, if you had to choose, and I'm giving you speed round questions probably early, but this is what comes up in my weird ADD brain, but or a pure varietal rosé in, say, California, which do you think makes a rosé that best suits your palate and your craft, if you had to choose?
My palate is a little bit more Grenache. I probably like the little Vin Gris style a little bit more. I am a little more French in my style with rosé. I like a little bit of spice in the background as well, and I think you can get that from Grenache, plus the real grapey character coming in. You can kind of get both. I do like Mourvèdres. I just have kind of always steered more towards the Grenache every time when I taste them. I'm like, I get that yummy character with Grenache.
How do you feel about Saignée, bleeding juice off from fully ripe grapes to make a rosé that may have slightly elevated alcohol?
I really actually like Saignée. I like to do it when I get to the juice I'm taking off my red wine. I'm intensifying that, and the juice that I'm bleeding has a lot of, might have short skin contact. It can have a lot of the aromatics that are the fully ripened grape as well. So I really like the Saignée process.
Saignée makes more sense to me for rosé in the evening. If you're going rosé all day and it's 15.5%, I mean, I've got a liver, but probably not that good of a liver. Good portion of my mom's side of my family have been teetotaling, non-drinkers for 4 generations. So I hope that didn't impact my liver's ability to process alcohol, and we'll keep on that one. Same deal with barrel burner. So it's just been announced that you will be the named winemaker for Barrel Burner. Talk to me about finding out about Barrel Burner, your feelings about it, and where these wines are going. It's some of my dad's favorite wine.
I'm excited. One thing is I'm kind of taking over the Paso Robles kind of section of the winemaking, which I think fits well with me studying from Australia in a little bit hotter climate and a little bit something that, is a little bit having to do with less water and higher temperatures is natural for me to go into. I like one thing with the Smashberry is it's not oak driven, but the Barrel Burner is a nice oak driven. It's a bold wine again, but it's got a really great balance with oak. Easy drinking, approachable wine at the same time. So I really like that. I have a nice thing to play with here. I like the toast, and you can play with the oak balance with the fruit as well, and just mingling those together, and kind of like the spice cabinet that we get to do as winemakers of oak influence here. So with the Cabernet, of just finding the right speckling of what that needs to see. And it's just a lot of fun. One of the things with the 17 is there was a little bit of the bourbon barrels influence. So that whole section of a new style of winemaking, of kind of bringing in bourbon barrels into Cabernet with that whole thing, is just a really exciting venture. So
Yeah. No, absolutely. And if the folks watching don't know, Nicholas Miller, our boss, is very, very familiar with brown liquor. He probably has one of the greatest collections of brown liquor in the county. I think it's over 300 bottles of brown liquor, everything, from Willet to Pappy, from Scotch, whiskey with an E, whiskey without an E. So he has a good relationship with Buffalo Trace. So I think he's pulling barrels out of Buffalo Trace. So if you'll notice our bourbon barrel Cabernet at J. Wilkes and our barrel burner wine, this price point, at a $12.99 price point, and if you get it on sale, you can even get it lower than that. The fact that some of this wine spent time in Buffalo Trace barrels is damn close to miraculous. So I love that. Any plans on, do you like the level of oak in the wine? What I found in my experience with helping Clay blend these original wines is we upped the oak to the point where we were like, okay, any more oak might be profane.
right.
And then we bottled the wine. And it goes back to what Brian Babcock taught me in 1996. You can't over oak a wine, but you can under wine the oak. Have we been under wining? Have we been it's amazing how these wines are oaked and then they go in a bottle and then they're released and they're balanced no matter how much oak we throw at these wines. Now, is that an indication of the quality of the fruit that's coming in from French Cap?
Yeah, it's just really great quality of the fruit. It has really bold characters, big, rich, delicious, jammy fruits that just balance beautifully with that intense oak character that we have.
Talk to me about, do you like decanting all these wines? I know that, do you have when we talk about dissolved oxygen in wine, we're getting a little geeky, but that's the reason why these folks are watching. I like to put my wines into bottle at Clopepi at around 0.5 part per million dissolved oxygen for long life. These are obviously pleasure wines that are meant to be consumed early, but certainly ones that could lay down 5 years and improve and knit together and become more complex. Do you suggest people decant these wines, or do they have a little bit higher dissolved oxygen in bottling?
We do about 1 is what we go at ours. So we do have a little bit higher. They don't necessarily have to decant, but they do benefit from it. It opens up even more. There is some length to these wines that they have a little bit, some ageability to them. They are meant to be approachable and drinking right away. But with just a little swirl in your glass, like you're doing right there, it just opens it up and gives it a real, just burns off and just really nice.
Reminds me a little bit of the same quality and flavor profile as some of my favorite QPR Cabernets from Knights Valley. And I know that the diurnal shift is higher in Paso Robles Highlands District, but I've always felt that Knights Valley, Sonoma places, Pope Valley, Knights Valley, and the areas, Dry Creek, are perhaps my favorite areas anywhere in the world for 100% Cabernet Sauvignon. This wine obviously has quite a bit of complexity, but it also is rich. It's got some really nice length to it too. Are you going to do you think you're going to attempt to produce a wine that shows more oak than what's showing in the 2017, or is that about your comfort level?
I wouldn't mind showing it pushing it a little farther out with oak. I mean, in my past, I have done wines that are double oaked. I don't think we're going to do that here, but I think I'd like to just push it a little farther forward, so it is, true to its name and the barrel burner up front.
Yep. So is that like a Montrachet double oak, like fermented in brand new oak and then racked from the fermented barrels into brand new barrels?
New oak, yeah.
Yeah, I suppose you could actually put a wine into brand new oak, for a red wine in brand new oak for a year, and then rack it into another brand new barrel and leave it for a year. that better be a pretty massively intense wine to stand up to it. I always want to know what a wine tastes like by virtue of the farming. One reason I love old wine is because it's stripped of its affectation. It's stripped almost of its winemaking. It comes down to what are the bones in the wine. And to me, the bones really reflect what's in the vineyard and how those wines can show. Let's see. So you've worked on and studied wine in 2 hemispheres and a number of producers. If you had to distill a lesson you've learned with each one of the places just a quick sort of bullet point lesson that you learned. For example, Babcock, Santa Rita Hills illuminated for me. That would be my take home message. I learned what the Santa Rita Hills could and couldn't do in 1996 at Babcock. If you were going to break down the number of producers that you've worked for, is there a take home message? Is there something that you give to that producer that said, it made me think about this as a winemaker?
Well, I mean, obviously the Han Estate and that whole area gave me the vineyard perspective. Innovation, I worked with Clark Smith. I mean, he really pushed techniques and innovation in our winery. I got to learn micro-ox with him, you know, all the new techniques, that side of the industry, and not to be afraid of it. Martini and Pratty, I worked with Dan Goldfield, I worked with Carrie Damsky, I worked with Sam Spencer, I worked with some of the greats over there and just all their winemaking techniques. Mum Napa, the art of sparkling wine itself and that in general. In my Australian experiences with Hope Estate and Elgo Estate, I really honed in my cellar experiences and all my cellar skills. I absolutely adore them. I worked at CSU, my Charles Sturt University winery as well. They really helped me fine tune them because, you know, it's a teaching university as well, and having a full functioning. I think I almost cussed. Full functioning winery. It's not day drinking without a lot of cussing. Terravant, I worked there. I honed in my customer service winemaking skills. That's a whole skill of its own. I keep going. I worked with Ken Brown. I mean, the master of Pinot Noir in the Santa Rita Hills. I can't express how much that man taught me, especially of the winemaker to vineyard relationship and how to get your grapes coming in perfectly. Center of Effort, I really learned from them about how much I like to lead and teach. And one of the things with theirs, they bring in a lot of students from Cal Poly and Allen Hancock in the area. And I really learned I like to share my knowledge. I have no problem. I want to have like a collaboration with all of us winemakers coming up and help each other. So that was one of my experiences there.
That's awesome. I always ask myself this question and I was stuck with it. I almost put it in the speed round, which we're almost to. What exists in the center of effort?
What exists in the center of effort?
Yeah, I've always wanted to know what the center of effort is. I always imagine it's this beautiful concept because it's about agency, right? It's about taking your human ability.
The feeling term is what it is. So the center of effort is where the center, when the wind hits the mast and you have the center of effort in sailing. So it's the center of effort being put into the wine industry as well. Yeah. So it's that whole center of where we also is the center of where the wine is being made. So
that's awesome. And I didn't know that. And Jeff Wilkes was also met Bobby Miller at the Santa Barbara Yacht Club. And there's an incredible story about their boat, which was called the Free Run, and all of the sailing adventures they had. So sailing, the ocean, the maritime influence, the wind, the fog, everything is just, it just keeps coming back. There's no way to escape it here on the Central Coast of California, just the same way that you couldn't escape, at least pretending you're a surfer if you're making wine in Margaret River.
Right.
Interesting. That's really, really cool stuff. Thank you for that. And then the last sort of full question I have is, so far, what's been your favorite moment being within and part of the Miller Family Wine Company?
I mean, we have a great winemaking team. I really do love my winemaking team. Probably my favorite moment, and I'm going to give a shout out to my cellar crew, is my cellar crew. These are an amazing group of guys and girls. They have a great camaraderie with each other. They welcomed me with open arms. I love going to work with them every single day. They're the reason, they make my job just even that much better. It's probably one of my favorite things. It's just an absolute great team and everything at the Miller family.
I should probably ask this question. Back when I was traveling 250 days a year and doing 30 states and 200 markets, I had a tendency to bring back beer from various places all over the country to the winemaking team. What kind of beer do you like to drink?
Me, I'm not a big beer drinker actually, but I do love Coopers, like I mentioned before. Yeah, I'm not a big beer drinker. I'm sorry, Wes.
I'll try to find you something. Do you drink? So interesting sparkling wine. If I went to Michigan, I could bring you back some stuff from the UP because they're making incredible sparkling wine up there. Or maybe some. I don't like sours because Brett, lacto, caucus.
Sour.
Why the hell would I want that? But yeah, I'll figure out something to bring you. It might be refrigerator magnets and it might be spoons, but we'll figure.
I actually collect refrigerator magnets.
Well, then now I know. Absolutely fantastic. All right, are you ready for the? Yes. All right. Before we enter into the speed round, and you will certainly have the ability to close out with any comments that you'd like to make. But before we enter the speed round of questions, which we always do at the end of our Friday sessions. Anything else you'd like to add before we jump in?
Oh, it's just been great being here with you. It's been a lot of fun. So thank you.
Look forward to continuing this. We got a great team, and I'm looking forward to seeing how these wines are coming out. So let's take a nice big sip.
Yeah. Cheers.
Happy day drinking, everybody. Happy Friday. Whether or not you're currently employed, it is Friday, so let's have some fun. Weekend, as Primus and Les Claypool once wrote, weekends aren't quite as important when you're unemployed, but at least you get to hang out with your working friends. So here we go.
You don't have to feel guilty drinking.
No, there's no guilt in drinking. That's
the Friday lesson.
All right. First question is horrifically male intense, but football, US or Aussie rules?
US. Chicago Bears.
Chicago Bears. I'm a 49ers fan. I think we both have something to prove this year. So let's get out there and get it. What up, Salinas? Alvarado Street Brewing or Cooper Sparkling?
Coopers.
You're wrong. That is absolutely 100% wrong. You should recognize that your hometown now is the host for the greatest brewery in the United States. Have you had Alvarado Street yet?
I have had it. I haven't had the whole flight. So I should sit down and have the whole flight.
Yes. Okay.
It's a great little stuff.
I'm cheeky about these answers, but you know what I mean. Hot dog on a stick or sausage rolls?
Oh, sausage roll.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Hunter Valley or Alsatian Riesling?
Oh, Alsatian Riesling.
Tennis ball can. Like the tennis ball can. I will say Alsatian is correct, and the correct answer is close St. Hugh. Well done. Vegemite or peanut butter?
Vegemite, because I'm allergic to peanut butter.
Whoa. Okay. Yeah, I still haven't got it, but it's yeast, right? So what can yeast not do?
Well, I told them it would taste good on a sandwich, and they looked at me like I was funny. I'm like, you eat it on toast.
That's bread, right? So you got to choose New Zealand or Tasmanian Pinot Noir. And Dr. Richard Smart is watching. Tasmania. Really? I mean, honestly, you prefer Tasmanian? Okay, so let's go Tasmanian or Santa Barbara Pinot. And this is you're not gonna get fired, I promise.
Nicholas watching. Marshall. I would do say Santa Barbara.
Okay, that is the politically correct answer, and I will say that is correct. And the absolutely pronounce that. Now this is the toughest question I've ever asked anyone on the show.
Oh,
pronounce the river on Wagga Beach.
Oh, the Murrumbidgee.
That is the weirdest word one of the weirdest words I've ever spelled. Say it again.
Murrumbidgee.
Murrumbidgee. Yeah, it was a word that I could not pronounce.
Yeah, you can't look at their words while you pronounce them, because looking at the word just doesn't help.
It's an Aboriginal thing, and I will never understand it. And how about the walking track that runs along the river?
Oh, I ran that all the time. What was the name of it?
That was even a weirder word.
I trained for a marathon on it. I can't remember the name of it.
And I can't even pronounce it. So we'll all look it up and pronounce it together in the future. Only one grape variety can survive in Santa Maria. What do you choose?
Pinot Noir.
I would say Chardonnay, but I think Pinot Noir is absolutely, there's just so much damn Chardonnay in the world, but there's so many places where Chardonnay doesn't belong. I think Chardonnay's, you look at Santa Rita Hills, you look at the real Sonoma Coast, there's no other place in the world. I mean, Margaret River, Burgundy, Chablis.
Yeah. I mean,
unbelievable.
Beautiful Chardonnay out of here. Yeah.
Unbelievable. So I would say that's correct. A famous photo of Queen Elizabeth II exists of her inspecting a lineup of something in Wagga Wagga, New South Wales, Australia in 1956. Was it, this is the only time I've asked a multiple choice question, was it the Australia Olympic swim team? Was it Aboriginal school children? Was it a lineup of sheep's posteriors? Or was it Charlie the Cockatoo?
I'm going to say sheep's rear ends.
That's absolutely correct. Well done. You win the prize, which is a number of Alvarado.
I'm like, it's coming to me.
No, it's actually, I mean, it's the picture that was on the Wikipedia page for Wagga Wagga. I did everything I could to be a prepared host, to know a little bit something about you. Tell us about Charlie the Cockatoo.
Charlie the Cockatoo. I mean, the one thing is cockatoos they're wild. They're just flying everywhere over there. So
$3,000 here.
Yeah, it's really strange to look out your window and there's a flock of cockatoos. Very different, very, very
And so
different.
that's your official mascot. It's the Charles Sturt University.
Cockatoo of Wagga Wagga, yeah.
And what the hell was wrong with Charles, and why didn't he put an A in his last name? Because it's Sturt. It's Sturt.
Everybody thinks I misspell my university's name.
My guess is because originally, through Australia Day, he was a criminal and he stole the A out of his own name.
He probably did. He wanted to change it.
I've never met a Canadian or an Australian. I think Canadians are the kindest people in the world, and Australians are the best drinking buddies you could ever have, because they always drink more than you and they always make you feel better about your drinking.
They do.
I've always enjoyed that for sure. So I certainly hope I will check real quick, basically real quick on our feed to see if we have any last questions, and then I will release you to have a absolutely wonderful and fantastic weekend. Let's see.
This has been a lot of fun, Wes.
I'm kind of enjoying myself thoroughly. I also reached out to Jonathan Nagy, who's going to be on the show in 2 weeks, to have a conversation about sort of to get together and maybe chew some fat, go down, either have a virtual lunch or have a real lunch and talk about the vintage coming up, because as things progress, as things change in the company, I want to make sure we're all on the same page. So I really, really appreciate you. There was, I know Nick asked if there was a derivation of the Smashberry name. I know that the name was invented by a guy down at Southern Glazers Wine and Spirits in LA, in Cerritos, well, in Orange County in Cerritos, because they thought they needed a brand that had millennial appeal with a more sort of modern, fresh, bright, primary fermentative kind of character. I don't know of any other derivation of the Smashberry name. I think everything is going to be Smashberry. So there's currently red wine and rosé. There was a white wine, as I said, it was a Roussanne-based white wine, and I think we'll see a return of the white wine. I suspect it'll be a little drier and a little more, you said serious, so I'll say serious, even though that's a little bit of a slap to the face to folks who enjoy a little residual sugar.
Well, no, I don't mean that. You're right the way you say it. Yeah,
well, either way, it's loads of fun, and I really thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. Please enjoy this beautiful weekend out here in the Central Coast of California. We're finding some perfect pre-summer weather. We've got the sort of summer solstice coming up, which is very important here in Santa Barbara. Should be loads of fun. I hope we stay close in touch and we continue to have these conversations. And I'm sure I'll have you back on the show sometime soon, and we'll find something else to talk about. Cockatoos and and everything. Yeah, bubbles. And I'll bring my wife on, and all we'll do is we'll just set up bubbles and taste, and make sure that there's no peanut butter anywhere around you. So thoroughly appreciate the time. I hope everyone had great times. If you do have questions and I didn't get to them, please post them and I'll make sure I'll answer the questions. And if they're for Roxie, I'll send them to her via email and make sure that she can add her comments here on Facebook as well. I thoroughly appreciate all of you guys being here. And we're 3 minutes early getting out. So I've just given you 3 minutes back to take over your life and have some fun. So thanks again, Roxie. Really do appreciate it.
Thank you, Wes.
All right, guys. Everyone have a fantastic weekend. Be safe, wear a mask, trust science.
Yes.
And remember that if 2020 has taught us anything, is that the vulnerable in this country don't mean a damn thing to the government. So let's make sure that the vulnerable are protected by virtue of our own innate morality, by science, by care. Find someone in your community that needs their help, give them some help. Find someone in your family that needs some help, give them some help. Find someone that you maybe don't know in your community and give them some help, and make sure that you are on the right side of history and that you are out there making sure that people feel connected and equal in the society because they deserve so. And that is the American promise. We should all have the ability to thrive, and we should all be flourishing with the amount of wealth and scientific knowledge in this country. There's no reason we can't all be healthy and happy. So take care of each other, take care of yourself, and we'll see you on Monday for another Day Drinking with Wes Hagen. Thanks again to Roxie Ward, a fantastic host, and thanks for teaching me some stuff about Australia that I never knew. Cheers, guys. Good night.